Coming to you live from Nairobi, Kenya. Welcome to Africa Focus, where we bring you news from across the continent right here on Switch TV Kenya. My name is Joel Church and our sign language interpreter is Tracy Dorcas. Start interacting with us on our social media platforms at Switch TV Kenya, at Joel Chacha M on Twitter, and as well on Facebook, Switch TV Kenya and Joel Chacha. Send in an SMS via 22999 free of charge. But first, here are stories making headlines. Niamey raises in Niger furious over France's red zone decision. Offshore refueling deepens fears for South Africa's penguin haven. Protests in Sudan's capital Khartoum calling for justice while marking one-year anniversary of a transitional government following the oust of Harlem President Omar al-Bashir. Begin with Africa Roundup stories.
Tunisians protested against the UAE-Israel deal, normalizing relations outside the United Arab Emirates embassy in Tunis. The UAE became the first Gulf country to normalize relations with Israel in a historic agreement brokered by the United States and raised the possibility of concluding similar agreements with other Arab countries. Lines of people braved cold weather in Johannesburg to buy alcohol and cigarettes after the coronavirus-linked ban on their sale was lifted. This has come as a big relief not only for private citizens but also restaurants and bars. Italy has no more room for illegal migrants, its Foreign Minister Luigi Di Maio said on Monday on a visit to Tunisia, from where many of them crossed the Mediterranean Sea. After meeting with the Tunisian President Kais Saied, Italy's top diplomat said Rome is ready to present all the necessary aid to Tunisia to combat illegal immigration. But he stressed that there is no question of living in Italy for those who arrive illegally, according to a statement by the Tunisian presidency. Italy has been struggling in recent months to deal with the daily arrivals of hundreds of migrants to its southern shores, a task complicated by security measures imposed by the ongoing coronavirus crisis. Tunisia, meanwhile, is battling high unemployment and political instability, pushing more so-called economic migrants to cross to Italy.
Moving on, Sudanese protesters in the capital Khartoum called for justice while marking one-year anniversary of a transitional government following the oust of Harlem President Omar al-Bashir. Bashir, who is currently on trial over the military coup that brought him to power, was overthrown on 11th of April 2019 by the military, which was responding to the protests against his 3 decades of iron-fisted rule.
Sudanese protesters in the capital Khartoum on Monday called for justice and peace as they marked the one-year anniversary of a transitional government following the ouster of a long-time autocrat Omar al-Bashir. Large crowds marched through the government district of the capital Khartoum, some burning tires, before police fired tear gas to break them apart. The Sudanese people are tired of eating, drinking and health, tired of the electricity cutting. We are tired of people asking for peace and asking for the government to consider our fatigue. And the first need is to demand the appointment of the Legislative Council and the joining of all the security companies to the Bank of Sudan. Clashes erupted at the end of the rally when an advisor to Prime Minister Abdallah Hamdok came out to collect a letter written by the demonstrators who demanded that the head of the government receive it personally.
We came to emphasize on one thing, that the street is still alive. We insist on the necessity of unification. I would like to remind that our demands are one, and it will not change. The most important is retribution for martyrs, and second, achieving social justice, forming legislative councils, forming the Peace Commission, and completing power structures.
Bashir, currently on trial over the military coup that brought him to power, was overthrown by the army on April 11, 2019, after a wave of mass protesters against his three-decade iron-fisted rule. On August 17, 2019, after weeks of intense negotiations, the military rulers and protest leaders signed a constitutional declaration under which a sovereign council of 6 civilians and 5 military figures will govern for a transitional period. However, demonstrators said the government had not fulfilled its promises. Protesters called for justice for those killed during the demonstrations against Bashir and military rule, and several carried flags and banners bearing slogans including justice, peace, reform the security sector, and the people are still suffering. Sudan's transitional government has been pursuing a string of reforms seeking to rebuild ties with the U.S., boost its international standing and rescue its ailing economy. But demonstrators say action has been too slow. Prime Minister Hamdok outlined in a statement on Monday his transitional government's achievement over the past year, including negotiations with multiple rebel forces. However, he acknowledged the challenges. Hamdok has made finding a peace with the rebel groups in order to bring stability to the restive regions of Darfur, Blue Nile, and southern Kordofan.
Elsewhere, countries of the Southern African Development Community have in a joint statement expressed their resolve to tackle important issues in the region, notably cybersecurity and terrorism. This comes only a few days after the capture of an important port in the north of Mozambique by jihadist guerrillas. The body also expressed solidarity with the Mauritius after an oil spill, after an oil spill off its coast.
The Secretariat conducted an assessment of emerging security threats in the region. The findings show that while the security landscape in the SADC region remains stable, there are areas that require strengthening, and these relate to terrorism and cybersecurity, transnational organized crimes, climate change and disasters, governance and democracy, and cross-cutting issues. Proposed recommendations to address the emerging threats were considered by the Organ Troika Summit on 14th August 2020, that is last Friday. In implementing the recommendations, priority will be placed on measures to combat terrorism, violent attacks, and cybercrime. 30, Summit expressed solidarity with the government and the people of Mauritius for the environmental disaster in its waters caused by a grounded ship, and they called upon SADC member states and the international community to support Mauritius in containing the disaster.
Meanwhile, here in Kenya, elders of the household community from the Malindi District Dance Organization, MADCA, have expressed their outrage at the way in which freedom fighters have not been identified in the country, expressing their remarks at the annual commemoration of Mekatilili and Menza held last weekend. Kevin Nyakundi with more.
They stretch their hips with a dance of its kind around this axis at Shakahola in Western Region. In a ceremony to commemorate the former freedom fighter of the Mijikenda community, Mekatilili wa Menza. The ceremony involves prayers, traditional dances and sacrifices in an area believed to be where Mekatilili gave a white man a brutal slap. According to MADCA Secretary General Joseph Karisa Mwarandu, freedom fighters have been largely ignored.
Najaribu kuwasihi viongozi wetu wa nchi ya Kenya wajue ya kwamba pale maofisini ambapo wako sasa ni kwa sababu ya juhudi ambazo zilifanywa na Mama Mekatilili wa Menza na mashujaa wa ukombozi wa Mau Mau. Kwa hivyo ningeomba hawa waweze kutambulika, waweze kutambuliwa sawa sawa, na zile sehemu ambazo wengi wamezikwa ziweze kutambuliwa na kuwekwa makavazi na kuheshimiwa kama vile sisi tunaheshimu katika hii sehemu hii ya Mekatilili ya Shakahola.
MADCA chairman Emmanuel Munyanya has called for the strengthening of the various activities that took place in the annual celebrations.
Kuna lazima ya hii sehemu kwanza ipatikane, iwe imeandikishwa vizuri kwa umma au ambao wanahusika katika hiki kitengo, na kisha pajengwe makavazi ambayo yatakuwa ni ya kuweka kumbukumbu za mama Mekatilili si mama Mekatilili wa Menza peke yake, lakini kumbukumbu za wapiganiaji uhuru labda Kenya nzima. Kiwe ni kituo ambacho kitakuwa kinawakumbusha vizazi vijavyo kwamba uhuru tuliopata hatukuupata kupewa mikononi. Wengine walipigania, wengine walikufa, wengine walitoa damu, na ndio sababu sasa watu wako maofisini, wako katika serikali, na haingepatikana serikali kama ama bendera kama si hawa mashujaa ambao walipigania uhuru.
Last week, Google Kenya recognized Mekatilili by using her image. Nyakundi Kelvin, Switch TV.
Still in the coastal part of Kenya, fear continues to rage. Banga village in Kwale County, where two more people have recently been murdered following allegations that they are involved in witchcraft, following strong culture norms in the region. Residents are now living in fear of insecurity as locals take matters into their own hands. Our reporter Njoki Merita tells us more.
For 68-year-old Maziko Jule Lele, the axe fell on him sharply and he lost his life to claims that he was a witch. The man was burnt to ashes.
Mzee Yono hayuko, aliyebakia ni mimi. Sasa nami pia naona nimeshikwa na uoga, hata kutembea pia. Jana nimechukua rungu, nikawa natembea kwenda huko mazishini na rungu, kwa sababu najua sasa madhari mzee huyu ameenda, aliyebakia ni mimi, nami nafikiri nitapelekwa. Ndio maana siwezi tembea peke yangu tena, nimenatishika.
As the Smiths continue to rage Banga village in Kwale County, residents are living in fear of what they term as a looming insecurity, as such incidents, according to the residents, are becoming more rampant by the day. According to Ndeme Mungaro, families are in crisis as domestic problems continue to be blamed on witchcraft, something that has left many families broken.
Jambo hili la huyu mzee limepelekwa Kwale, na hakuna hata polisi kutoka huko Kwale kumfuata huyu mama. Hakuna. Kweli serikali kweli inatufahamu kweli? Sisi sasa tutafanyana vibaya, kwa sababu huyu mzee, kama serikali hapo mwanzoni imechukua ngumu, huyu mzee hangeuawa, lakini serikali imeacha kabisa.
The act continues to take out most elderly people, forcing some of them to seek for refuge in forests. For the villagers, reports to the police is taken as mere mockery, who now want the government to take it to serious account, the killings occurring in the coastal region.
Wamezuiliana mambo ya uchawi, hilo jambo lisichukuliwe tu hivi rahisi, alafu waambiwe nenda kesho rudi. Ni mtu akipeleke ripoti yule mkuu wa polisi kama OCS achukue hili jukumu na awatume maofisa wake waje wafuatilizie hilo jambo haraka iwezekanavyo, ili watu waweze kuwa na ule uoga na watu waweze kujua mwanadamu ni aishi vipi.
However, Matuga Sub-County Police Commander Francis Nguli confirmed the incident, saying they received a report via a phone call from the area chief, retaliating that further investigations are ongoing to establish cause of the killing to help the deceased family get justice. Njoki Merita, Switch TV.
Away from that, German Foreign Minister Heiko Maas, while visiting war-torn Libya's capital, has warned of a deceptive calm since fighting has stalled around Site, which is the central hometown of fallen dictator Muammar Gaddafi. During a surprise visit to the oil-rich North African country, Maas said that outside powers are massively arming the country.
Libya has been in chaos since a Western-backed uprising toppled Gaddafi in 2011 and has become a major departure point for desperate migrants trying to reach Europe with the help of traffickers. Eastern-based military commander Khalifa Haftar launched an offensive in April 2019 to seize Tripoli. After 14 months of fierce fighting, Turkish-backed pro-GNA forces expelled Haftar's troops from much of western Libya and pushed them eastward to Sirte, a gateway to Libya's rich oil fields and export terminals. While the GNA has also been supported by Qatar, Haftar has had the backing of the United Arab Emirates, Egypt, Saudi Arabia and Russia.
Denn auch wenn im Moment, Gott sei Dank, die Waffen weitestgehend schweigen,
even if for now the weapons have mostly fallen silent, it is a deceptive calm. Through the flow of arms on both sides from international backers, there remains a great danger of military escalation.
Einer Eskalation, und zwar einer militärischen Eskalation, weiterhin groß.
Mas urged them to find ways out of this very dangerous situation and backed a UN proposal to establish a demilitarized zone around Sirte, some 450 kilometers east of Tripoli. He said he had discussed this idea with Prime Minister Fayez al-Sarraj and Interior Minister Fadi. But
we support the United Nations SMIL proposal that is the first step proposes the disarmament and demilitarization of the city of Sirte.
According to Turkish media reports, Turkish Defense Minister Hulusi Akar was also in Tripoli on Monday. Speaking at a joint press conference, Mas GNA counterpart Mohamed Taher Siala objected to the European Union's naval mission Irini, which aims to enforce a UN arms embargo on Libya. He said it deprives the GNA of military aid to counter the aggression of Haftar, but does not monitor the arrival of arms and machineries by air, sea and land via Egypt in support of Haftar.
لقد رفضت حكومة الوفاق بشدة.
Libya's UN-recognized Government of National Accord, GNA, strongly rejected the mission Irini, which looked good from outside but bad in reality, because as it is right now, it's only towards the unity government, not to let her receive any help to conquer the aggression, and does not monitor the export of weapons and mercenary fighters by air and sea, and by the Egyptian-Libyan terrestrial borders.
جوا وبحرا وعبر الحدود البرية الليبية المصرية.
Germany's top diplomat on his two-day trip was next due to visit the United Arab Emirates, one of Haftar's main backers, which was last week agreed to normalize diplomatic relations with Israel. Mas said the UAE had shown that it had the ability to make an important contribution to peace in the region, and added that now he has hoped to see encouraging signs from Abu Dhabi on the issue of Libya. Mas said he also wanted to discuss the fate of migrants stuck in the Libyan detention centers, where human rights groups have reported widespread abuses and mistreatment.
Time to take a breather. Stay with us here on Africa Focus. Still to come. Tensions remains in the Ukraine Ivory Coast after violence against President Alassane Ouattara's candidacy for a third term in office. Welcome back to Africa Focus. My name is Joel Church and our sign language interpreter is Tracy Dorcas. Moving on, residents in Niger's capital Niamey expressed anger and frustration following the French Foreign Ministry decision last week to place most of the country, with the exception of the capital Niamey, in the red zone, for which there is a strong recommendation to avoid. This comes after 8 people, including 6 French aid workers, were killed by armed men on motorcycles south of Niamey.
The French foreign minister on Wednesday issued a firm warning against traveling to Niger after 6 French nationals were among 8 people killed by suspected jihadists at the weekend. The ministry website said people were strongly advised not to travel anywhere in the country, the exception being the capital Niamey, for which travel was not advised unless for compelling reasons. The new advice means that southern part of Niger, roughly a quarter of the country, has been added to the so-called red zone, for which there is a strong recommendation to avoid.
Je suis furieux contre la France.
Any Nigerian concerned about the dignity of this country feels humiliated today. humiliated in his skin. Niger is red. They have to leave. Damn it. They just have to leave. In any case, they leave by taking advantage of us. We have to tell each other the truth. They take advantage of us.
The impoverished country lies in the heart of Sahel, which has become badly destabilized by a jihadist insurgency that began in northeastern Nigeria in 2010 and in Mali in 2012.
I urge the Nigerian government to protest against this classification and to say that we do not agree at all with it, that it is totally arbitrary. In the end, it is contempt for the Nigerian people. France must treat Niger as a sovereign state.
6 French aid workers, their Nigerian guide and a driver were murdered on Sunday in the Kor National Park, a wildlife haven 60 kilometers from the capital, Niamey.
It is also the fault of the Nigerian people because security is not sufficiently secure in the country. There are too many bandits of all kinds, so we must strengthen and better organize our security systems.
The killings were the first by jihadist gunmen in that area, a destination for weekend leisure trips by Niamey residents, including foreigners. Previously, Niamey and the town of Kure were marked as yellow under France Color Code Security Advice, a category that calls for additional vigilance but says the risk is compatible with tourism. Niamey is now classified as orange, travel not advised unless for compelling reasons, while Kure, like the rest of the country, is in the red zone.
Away from that, and now the focus on COVID-19 matters. Faced with an increase in cases after the start of the confinement in Morocco, the authorities imposed travel restrictions to and from 8 cities and closed some neighborhoods in Tangier.
الآن احنا في مدينة طنجة نعيش واحد ظروف استثنائية ظروف
We live in Tangier and the situation is delicate and difficult because of the pandemic and many cases have been recorded. We are in the first or second line at the national level and we register a lot of cases every day.
الرتبة الأولى أو الثانية على الصعيد الوطني كنسجلوا يوميا أعداد كبيرة كنسجلوا أيام للأسف الآخر هذا التطويق اللي قامت به السلطات الداخلية والسلطات الولاية.
It's not normal to see this reinforced military and police presence in the city of Tangier, and in particular to see armored vehicles and police dispatchers at the entrance of our neighborhoods. But Tangier is a lively and dynamic city.
الباب ديال الحوب ديالنا والباب ديال الحومات والحشومه زعما ما كناش كنبغيو نوصلوا ولكن طنجة هي هذه طنجة مدينة.
On to other news, there are still tensions in Daukro, the stronghold of former head of state Henry Konan Bedi, and candidate for the October presidential election after violence against President Alassane Ouattara's candidacy for a third term in office left at least 6 people dead in town and surrounding area and more than 100 injured.
Le premier jour, il a fait une discussion avec un Malinké ici.
On the first day, there was a discussion with the Malinke here because he was involved in Daukro's conflict. So when he recognized him in the village here, he argued with him and left angry. And it was while he was on guard duty at 2 a.m. that they called to say he had been shot. And when we arrived on the scene, we saw my cousin's body, but we didn't see the murderer.
On a vu le corps de mon cousin couché, mais on n'a pas aperçu.
Mais voyez quelle perte nous avons eue.
Look at our losses. Today we're outside. We don't even know where to go because I don't know. I don't know how to explain it. We're dispersed. All we're asking for is peace.
Nous demandons seulement la paix.
On a vraiment évité le pire.
We avoided the worst. It could have been carnage.
Ça aurait pu être un carnage. Que les communautés ici, après, c'est vrai.
The communities here, it's true that this event happened, but they know how to live together, and this will pass.
Ça va passer. Ça va passer.
That's all here on Africa Focus today, but keep the conversation going on our social media platforms as Switch TV Kenya, at Joel Chacha M on Twitter, and as well on Facebook, Switch TV Kenya. My name is Joel Chacha, and our sign language interpreter is Tracy Dorcas. Until next time, do have yourself a great day.